joy to meet you, welcome you.
Thank you.
And it's an honor to have Ron Charles, Indiana John of the Christian history,
Yeah.
to ask some questions, special of the history of the New Testament. So I think this is your special focus.
Thank you. Yes.
And my focus is Albania, and as I learned that you have quite a lot of time also to seek about the history, the
Yes.
first Christian history in Albania.
Yes.
And we are doing some journeys with the leaders on the Via Egnatia.
Mm-hmm.
And our reason is a little bit the history, but on the other hand side, the motivation to receive what Paul is standing for.
Mm-hmm.
So we say we are proud as Albanians, we are proud to have this history, but it's not only to know it, also to step into it. And so we just walk on the footsteps of Paul to receive his faith and his focus. So this is our topic, but I like to know a little bit more, because not so much you can find in written form, or you have to seek very carefully. And
Yeah, well, we were very privileged that even when Albania was still communist, that we were invited over to do some archaeology work there. And so we had the opportunity to actually to introduce them to, through archaeology, the fact that the Apostle Paul and the early church actually ministered there. Now, the Albania at that time was called Illyricum,
mm-hmm.
and then the northern part of present-day Albania, as well as Bosnia-Herzegovina and Serbia, that was called Dalmatia.
Mm-hmm.
And so Paul was definitely in the area, and he ministered in Appolonia. Appolonia is a southern city in Albania. And he ministered throughout Illyricum. And so the footprints of Paul were very much in evidence in Albanian culture, Albanian history.
What facts are known? They really prove that that Paul was here and what he did. Do you know something?
Well, we know that the amphitheater in Durrës, Albania, which was built by Christian labor, and that was built in the 1st and 2nd century. And we know that Titus, the book of Titus was written. Titus was martyred in that arena.
Oh.
And 5,000 Christians died there, and including Titus. And so we excavated some of the catacombs that were there, and some of the Christian graves, and so it was all. It was very obvious that the Christian footprint was there very vividly, and you can and through that excavation, Paul's name continually came up time and time and time again, especially in at the time before he went to Rome.
Yes.
He went to Rome during Nero's time, he probably was shipwrecked maybe 58, 59 AD. And so before then is when he was in Illyricum. So he was probably there in between 50 and 55. And so his footprint was very much in evidence in Illyricum history.
Yeah. It looks like that he was at this time, as he realized from Aquila and Priscilla that the Nero is so against the Christians, so he decided to go back to Thessaloniki, and he was perhaps at this time in Durrës. Could
Yes.
that be?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And probably and then from Durrës he probably went to Apollonia, and then on back to Rome.
Yeah.
And so it was. And he very well could have been there at the time that Titus was martyred.
Okay, yeah. Is there some background that we know what churches he built in Albania?
No, the only one that we know of for sure, without question, is Apollonia.
Okay.
There is some of the teachers there in Elbasan claim that Paul was there also, but I have not been able to confirm that.
Okay.
And we know that he was in Euragostra, and because Euragostra dates back even before the birth of Jesus, during the Alexander days, and so there's that local tradition says that Paul was there also.
Where's the city?
Euragostra, which is the far the last big city before you get into Greece.
Okay, yeah.
Way to the south.
Yeah. I wrote some articles about the church in Durrës. They had about approximately 60 families.
Yeah.
And it was also a huge group. And they say it's also related to Paul, so that this church in Durrës.
Yeah, well, the church in Durrës was actually began by Greek Christians, and which were probably converted by Paul or Apollos, and so
they came because of they got converted in Greece, and they come like missionaries to Albania. So.
They got converted in Thessaloniki.
Okay.
And then they came as missionaries to Ischka, and then established the church in Durrës.
Yeah.
And it's very probable that Paul maybe was the overseer of that congregation, sending out missionaries to what is now Bulgaria, Kosovo, and Serbia, and on all of that area.
Yeah.
And but it was a very active Roman community, and so to say that Paul was active in building churches and overseeing churches in that area is most probable.
Yeah.
And in fact, probably just as probable as to say that he was in Macedonia or any place else.
Yeah.
He was there.
We had a last meeting at this place, and we were in the little city Lynn. And in Lynn there is a huge ruin of a cathedral, but it's quite too big for what is necessary. They had a huge building, but never there was a big city. So do you know something why this is such a thing? Was it a Christian center, or was it important for something?
Well, there was a Christian center in Peshkapia. Peshkapia is, and so there was, when all of that area was Dalmatia, there was a center of Christianity in that area. And so that, from Peshkapia, is how they got the Christian influence throughout that whole eastern border area. Bulgaria, Macedonia, all of that was centered from that location.
Okay, yeah. So in this area, in the north part, in Montenegro and Serbia, the Bogomil movement, they come from the Pauliniana. Pauliniana.
Yeah.
It was a movement coming from the Roman province Asia. And they were coming up to Bulgaria, and then from Bulgaria to the other parts of Balkan, and they are named Friends of God. It's the name of Bogomils, and that means Friends of God. And they were very strong, persecuted from the Catholics. But after the king becomes a Bogomil and a friend of God, so they were really nearly the first church.
King Zog?
I don't know the name of the king, but this was a very early movement, and out of this movement, the French Reformation was influenced. So it's interesting that from the Balkan grows up, and the first kind of Reformation in Europe comes from the Balkan. It's very interesting.
Well, you know, Constantine, he was born in Illyricum.
Okay.
And so, you know, his heart was always to that area. And so I'm sure that with his influence, building on the foundation that Paul had established, and we know that the church in Shkodra was established by Apollos.
Oh.
And you know, I don't say it's not the it was not a companion of Paul, but certainly it was. He's mentioned in the gospel in the book of Acts as you know, when it says some say that you're from Paul and from Apollos. Yeah. Apollos then established the church at Shkodra.
Oh, yeah.
And so the Albania, what we had the opportunity to do in 1990, we were excavating the amphitheater in Durrës.
Yeah.
And so they filmed it, and we were on TV throughout Europe. And what we did, it was actually illegal at that time. It was still under communism.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was, but what we did is that we would show them artifacts that we had found. I said, now this shows that this is a Christian artifact. So your mothers and fathers and your ancestors, they were not only Christian, but they died for their faith. And this shows, this proves that they went through much persecution and they accepted Jesus willingly.
Wow.
And that for only the very first time in Illyrian history, you know, during your, and we would tell them, it says, during your history, you have been forced to believe what the Greeks said to believe. You were forced to believe what the Romans said that you must believe. You were forced to believe what the Persians say that you must believe. And you were forced into this, and for the first and only time in your history were you able to make a choice. And when you were able to make a choice, you chose Christianity. And this proves, this archaeological artifact proves that you chose Jesus. And not only did you choose Jesus, you chose to die for him. And this is the legacy of your country.
Wow, yeah. And how many did you say were killed in the stadium? 5,000. Wow.
And it was through the
what year around?
The blood games. It was first and second century. The first, I think, the first blood game was 52 AD, and it went on until 117. 117 was the last one. It was Hadrian. Hadrian. Hadrian stopped them.
But 5,000, where does they come from? So was this from a bigger area?
They were shipped in for the games, and so. But most of them were Christian prisoners. Yeah. And they would ship them. They shipped them in from Macedonia, from Greece and from Turkey and different places into that for the new arena.
Was this a special arena because it was such an important thing, or something?
Yes, and it was built. It was like the circus in Rome, except it was a smaller sporting area and more seating areas, and they had it was enough to seat 60,000 people, and then of course they had the animal cages underneath and all of that, and so most of the Christians who were involved with it were buried in the catacombs, and then. Once the room ran out of the catacombs, and they would bury them up around the arena, on the hills up around, and so there were not only 5,000 Christians who were martyred there, but you had more than 30,000 animals who also died there, and they would have what they called the Day of the Blood, and it was like for 4 or 5 days straight that they would you come to the arena, and the proprietors would give you a bow and arrow or a spear or a sword or something, and then they would run the animals in, and then once the animals came in, then you could kill the animals with whatever weapon that they gave to you. And then the Christians would come in and remove the animals, the dead animals, but when they were removing them, then they could also shoot at them.
So this was a kind of entertainment?
It was entertainment, yes.
Wow.
And so there were at least 30,000 animals died along with the Christians.
And these people, they make these things. Were they special people? So it was not for the normal people, I think.
It was not for the common people. Yeah. At that time, General Pompey had brought the first colonies of Romans into there, and then Augusta Caesar, he brought colonies in also, and so they were the first ones to bring Romans into that area to resettle, and a lot of that land under Nero and under Caligula and under Claudius was given to the military as a reward for service, and so this entertainment was put on to entertain the former military, so that the Caesar would say, I appreciate what you've done, and this is for your entertainment. And they especially had celebrations on what they call the Festival of Tribute. And it was the birthday of Augustus Caesar, which was August 29th. So they would normally have a celebration beginning like August the 20th, go all the way to like September the 10th. And so like maybe 20 or 30 days straight that they would have that. Yeah. And so it was a big thing. And the arena there in Durrës was unique in that it really was specifically put on in a dedication to the military.
How many seats did this stadium have?
There was about 60,000 can seat in there. Now that included the seating and the standing room up around the top. That you could stand up there, and depends on where your level of service was, whether you were a general or a private in the military, is that where your seating was, and the cost to go to the arena. Let's say, as an example, on the front row, you would say like maybe €100 for a ticket, up to the ones at the top, maybe 25 cents. But it was dedicated to them. And then once the military had filled, it had all been sold for them. Then it was open to the public. Yeah. After that, but the military and their families, they had priority.
And all this thing, what you found, and as you was there for researching. Is this now in a museum, or where is it? Yeah, where is it?
The Archaeology Museum in Durrës. And there's one particular thing as a tablet. And during the 1st and 2nd century, Christians were buried the same way at every place. Whether you were buried in Greece, whether you were buried in Africa, whether you were buried in Illyricum, they were buried the same way. And the Christian was laid on their right side. Their right hand was under their head. Their knees were pulled into a fetal position. and then the left hand was extended. And in the left hand, in which you were buried, that you would have something that was dear to you in life. Mm-hmm. It could be a necklace, an amulet of some sort, or maybe even a lock of your children's hair. But you were buried with that. And we were excavating this one Christian grave, and it was a girl. You could tell, the age, and she was maybe, our paleontologist said that it was maybe 14, 15 years old, and her entire left side was the ribs and the bones were all broken. You could still see teeth marks of the animals on the bones, and so she was killed in the arena. And I had two students with me from the University of Tirana, and they claimed to be atheists. Of course, at that time, all of Albania was atheist, because the democracy had not come in yet. And so they were up on the getting the dust off of the extended hand, and I was down at the feet. I was clearing the dust from the feet skeleton. And all of a sudden, these guys went crazy. They started screaming and trying to get out of the tomb. And I told them, I said, "Get back down here. We're not finished yet. We got lots of work to do." No, we'll not. And so I said, "Why? What's the problem?" And so they pointed down at the extended hand. So I went up there, and of course, when they were trying to get out of the tomb, they spat dirt all over the hand again. So I went up there, was clearing it out. And in the extended hand of this girl was a clay tablet, a very small clay tablet. And written on that in ancient Greek, it said, "For the cause of Christ, I lay down my life." And that was such a powerful, powerful thing. And that tablet is on display at the Archaeology Museum in Durrës. Mm-hmm. And one of those students accepted Jesus that day, right there in the arena. Yeah. And I've often said that little girl probably didn't even enter her mind that 2,000 years after she died, that her testimony for Jesus would still be powerful enough to melt the heart of an atheist. Yes. And he became a missionary. He became a missionary to Bosnia-Herzegovina. Mm. And the last I had heard, he's still living for Christ. Yeah. And but yeah, we found lots of that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And it was placed in the museum in Durrës, also placed in the museum in Tirana at the university, and so those were the artifacts that we had the television news for, showing the people of Albania that they chose Jesus when they could choose any religion they wanted. They could have chose the Greeks, they could have chose the Romans, they could have chose any of them. But they chose Jesus. Yeah. With the high price. The highest price. Yes. So.
Do you have some knowledge about the Illyric religion? What was there before the Christianity comes and before Roman religion comes into the country? Do you have some information at that?
I don't have a lot of information. I just know that it was more of a religion to honor the spirits of the earth, mm-hmm. The spirits of the mountains and the spirits of the trees, and but especially the mountains. Yeah. They actually worshipped the mountain spirit, okay, and as their ultimate god, and then when the Christian missionaries came back in the pre-crusade days, they said it's okay that you worship the spirit of the mountains, But let me tell you his name. His name is Jesus.
Uh-huh.
And so they kind of
Mixed up.
mixed them together, which I understand why they did it. I just don't agree with what they did.
Yes. I wrote some information that Paul, former Turkey and also Spain, to Albania. And after he was not successful in Spain, he comes back again to the province Asia and also to Illyricum, what means Albania, after a long time. So he was in the first time in the prison. Mm-hmm. And after the first time in prison, he was in Spain, and he was just shortly in Spain, and then he came back to Asia and to Albania. Do you have some information about that?
That is true. He went to Spain. He first went to Marseille, mm-hmm. and Lazarus, the one raised from the dead. Yeah. Lazarus went to Marseille and started the church in Marseille. Oh. And Paul went to Marseille, and Lazarus sent some men with him, and they went over the Pyrenees into Spain. And so that's the only area where Paul was, is in the Pyrenees Mountains in mm-hmm. Spain. And they spent about a year there and came back. And then once they came back to Marseille, then Paul did go back to Asia, went back to Illyricum, mm-hmm. and actually evangelized the coast. He didn't go inland, didn't go into the mountains. Like he came in Kuria, and then he stayed on the coast all the way up to. Well, then he went, from there he traveled to the coast, and then he stayed on the coast, in Durrës and and all that area. But yeah, the footprint of Paul was definitely in Albania when it was Illyricum. Yeah, and it was quite a testimony. And he said in the book of Romans that I have preached all the way from Illyricum to Dalmatia, and so which that's confirmation of that.
Do you have a special expression, a special kind of greetings or a message to the Albanians? So, because I will make this documentation first of all for my Albanian friends.
Yeah. We fell in love with Albania, even when it was under communism, and we were. I think democracy came in 90 or 91, something like that. Yeah. And it was fruitful. It was hard living there because at that time they had nothing, just nothing. We brought aid in, from Italy and from Greece and different places. So it was hard. It was hard living at that time. But the people were so sincere. They were so loving and kind, and which was so phenomenal because of the ruthless Inverhoja type of communism, that Stalin type of communism that they had there, which they beat the love and the compassion out of the people and tried to drive it out of them. But they were still there, and they accepted us willingly, and it was a great experience.
So I think thank you very much for this time.
My pleasure. Pleasure meeting you.
Stop! 2 more things before you click on the next video. If you also want to experience being a Christian, like these people in Albania back then inhale the messages of bewegen deeply. I deliberately say inhale. Draw in. Because you may not have gotten that so far with normal listening, not with human cleverness, but in the demonstration of the Spirit and power. Just as Paul lived between Jerusalem and the Illyricum, so we in Europe and around the world. Take a look at the website, www.bewegen.love. And then there's another thing. Help us with the humanitarian activities in Albania, one of the poorest countries in Europe. Support the children's projects. Or donate a goat for one of the many single mothers in the mountain villages. Details you can find in the description of the video.